We've got an opportunity now to look ahead to what must be the race of the season, the race that everyone is talking about. The King George VI and Queen Elizabeth QIPCO Stakes will take place at Ascot on Saturday, and we've got 3 Derby winners. We've got a number of Group 1 winners. So we've got last year's winner, and this is what the betting is looking like. King of Steel, second, runner-up in the Derby, is currently ahead of the Derby winner at 11-4 from 100-30, Auguste Rodin. Emily Upjohn, 4-1, coming back up to possibly her preferred trip after defeat in the Eclipse. Hukum has come for support after the rain has been coming down this weekend at 4-1, 11-2 for Desert Crown. Last year's winner, Pyledriver, is 7-1, and then 16-1. Bigger the rest. Martin alongside me to go through this, and with rain continuing to go down and potentially a lot more rain to come around, it's no real surprise that Hukum has come for support. Obviously a horse that you know well. We've all seen how he's come back from injury. Pyledriver, in a way, Hukum, Desert Crown and Pyledriver are all quite similar in that they've all come back from injury, they've all had one run, and they've all could be able to push forward from that. How do you see this race shaping up?
Well, it looks like it's going to be a class renewal of the King George, doesn't it? I mean, if they all take part, obviously the one thing we do know for certain is the ground is probably going to be soft. Will that rule a few of them out, or will it affect them? The 3-year-olds get such a pull in the weights, don't they? They get like 11 pounds, but I think in the last 10 years, only 3 3-year-olds have won. Taking on the older horses. It looks like an epic. It's going to be a great race. Pyledriver, you know, I've got to be loyal. He's always overlooked. He always goes under the radar. He's 7-1. He was last year's winner. He won't be affected by the ground. He's won on heavy ground at Haydock. He's got a turn of foot. He comes into the race in great form. Won at Ascot, and he was not really fully fit, and he still managed to win Hardwick. He goes there with a massive chance. I think he'll fly under the radar at too big a price, like he normally does, and he will run a big race. Hukum, we've seen him win at Sandown. I think Desert Crown can turn that form around from Sandown because of the way the race is run. But I'm not sure about Desert Crown on very soft ground. So there's so many different dynamics to it, isn't there? Yeah,
we can have a look at this. I'd love to get your opinion on this. Obviously, there was a lot taken away, and we now know that William Buick has actually sat on Desert Crown recently in a piece of work. This day, Desert Crown was ridden by Richard Kingscote. There has been some negative sort of thinking about the way that the race was rode from Richard Kingscote's perspective. He travelled into the race like the best horse in the race, but Hukum, in a bit of a pocket here, edged out and was able to see him out on potentially not his preferred trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Desert Crown's coming off a layoff here, and yeah, Richard's come under some criticism, and it's, you know, sometimes you can think it's a bit harsh, but he did kind of make his ground up from the back in one go on the outside on a steep track, and then he's kind of found himself there to be shot at. I think if he had his time again, if he rode the race again, he wouldn't kick as soon as he did. He would have held the pack tight and give Hukum a bit more of a hard time to get out, and just waited a little bit. And then when you do kick, at whatever point you kick up the hill at Sandown, you've got to keep going. He kind of he didn't stop riding, I'm not suggesting that, but he kind of, I don't know whether he thought, you know, I'm going to win, let's not give the horse a hard race. But it was a bit of a stop-start effort from the saddle without being too critical. It's like, just, if you've kicked, just get on with it. And it gave Hukum every chance to get back at him. But Desert Crown will come on for that. I'm sure Connections won't be too phased about finishing second to a good horse like Hukum, Group 1 winner. A good stepping stone. And by all accounts, he's been flying at home and in his work, so that has to be respected. Yeah,
Hukum has obviously missed the opportunity to take on Pyledriver in the Hardwick with the ground just going too quick in the end. He's possibly not ideal, maybe, just especially with the sort of bounce factor in mind. Do you think it's a benefit for a horse to have had plenty of runs before a big race like this? You know, the one thing with Hukum, Desert Crown and Pyledriver is that they've only got that one run after such a long break under their belts.
Yeah, that's true, but sometimes these horses at the top level, they only run a handful of times anyway. The races are mapped out for them, and they're going to go on into the autumn with the arc in mind. So sometimes having a fresh horse at this level is, you know, can be more positive. Hukum had a long spell off, and Owen did a great job to get him back and to win like he did, and the same with William and Pyledriver, and the way he did at Ascot, albeit he wasn't 100% fit, so he can only improve from that, and Pyledriver looks better than ever.
Yeah.
At the age of 6, sometimes these horses don't go on long enough for us to enjoy.
Yeah.
And Hukum and Pyledriver are both 6-year-olds, and then we've got the 2 best 3-year-olds, the Derby winner and second, so it's all the ingredients to be a really good race.
Well, last year, obviously, Pyledriver took the race. He had some 3-year-olds who probably underperformed, Emily Upjohn being one of them, Westover. This year, we've got 2 what seems to be very much above an average 3-year-olds in the shape of Auguste, Rodin and King of Steel. What do you make of them? Which one would you be most fearful of?
To be honest with you, they both went on and won after Epsom. I always think Auguste, Rodin and King of Steel would be better than King of Steel. I think he beat him comprehensively in the Derby. I know Kevin was a bit critical of himself, but I didn't think he did anything wrong. Auguste, Rodin was just the best horse, and I think he will remain that way, certainly a 1.5 miles. Whether the soft ground will bring them, turn the form around, I don't know. But I was disappointed with Auguste, Rodin. He won an Irish Derby. You can't use disappointment in the same sentence, but to me, he just didn't quicken well enough to beat older horses in a King George. I just didn't. I thought it was a below par performance from him, which sounds ridiculous for me to say.
What would you have wanted? What would you have hoped to have seen him to quicken away? Because there was a big headwind, and Ryan was very much emphasising how hard it was for the horses these days to get through. It was like a brick wall trying to get through. But what were you hoping to have seen from him? And what do you think that? Do you think it's a battling quality that he'll really, really need to show on Saturday?
Well, it's all about it's a change of gear, and this was a workmanlike performance. He beat his stablemate by just over a length. It just looked workmanlike. Granted, there was a bit of a headwind, but it wasn't that bad. And there was a fall in the race. Unfortunately, it was a bit messy. But I thought from the 2-pole to the winning line, he should have showed, like he did in Derby, a real acceleration and a turn of foot. And he's going to need to be more like the Derby horse to win the King George than that performance in the Curragh.
What have we learnt from these races gone past? Because we've always that long big straight that you see at Ascot. We've seen some brilliant battles. I think of Enable, Crystal Ocean. You see horses head to head. We could have plenty of horses at that sort of the level that they're at, really throwing their all into it. Is there a horse? We saw Emily Upjohn versus Paddington in the Eclipse just a couple of weeks ago. That it's really that battling quality and really get see it out, but also have a little bit more stamina than some of the others.
You're going to need a bit of everything at this level. You need a horse that can stay 1.5 miles, can cope with conditions, but the key ingredients is that turn of foot. You can quicken. Pyledriver's won all of his races at Ascot quickening off the home turn, and he'll can quicken and go a length or two clear. And yes, he might wander under pressure, but he'll keep going, and it's hard to beat horses like that. And equally, we haven't even mentioned Westover, an Irish Derby winner, and he looks like he's coming back to his best when he won in France. He was good in Dubai. He's 16-1. That tells you. Luxembourg, you couldn't rule him out either. It's such a good race, but you're going to need to have a horse that can travel and get a good position from the start, because there can be rough races. But they've got to possess a good turn of foot. And I just thought Auguste, Rodin come unstuck a little bit in Ireland. He didn't show that turn of foot that he had at Epsom. But this is Aidan O'Brien we're talking about. Yeah. I mean, he can turn a horse around in a couple of weeks. So it's just going to be such a great race. A lot will depend on the ground as well, though, won't it? And a lot will depend on where you're drawn in the race.
I was going to say the draw, the pace of the race as well. And we saw the 3-year-olds last year just couldn't travel. It just settle at all, could they? They couldn't really get involved because they sort of blew their chances away early on. Yeah,
because what normally happens is wherever's at the front gets there, you go quickly to get a position. Everyone wants to get a position. So you've asked your horse to quicken out the stalls and go and get a position. Then whoever gets there slows her up, and then you get horses mid-division or at the back just keen and get keener and keener. It happened to Adayar and Emily Upjohn. So your job as a jockey is to win your race, but it's also to put the horses behind you, around you, put them in a bad position. You're riding to get them beat, and that's what every jockey does, and that's what makes these races so intriguing. Whether or not we see an Adelaide River or something run as a pacemaker, not quite sure. So, I mean, we're guessing a little bit, but it looks a great race in prospect, but we're looking forward to seeing the final declarations.
I know your heart and your head says Pyledriver. Is that about right?
It is. I think I really do, and I'm obviously I'm connected with him. I'm loyal to him, but he's won on the track. He's won 2 Group 1 races. He won this last year when he was a big price and wasn't considered. He doesn't matter where he's drawn. He jumps out the stalls like a sprinter, so you can put him in any position. Yeah. He's settling better now. He goes on the ground, so there's less boxes unticked with him than a few of them.
The frightening thing is that if that was 75% fit or 80% fit or whatever it was at Royal Ascot, what's 100%? I think that's what really got William and Chris buzzing after Royal Ascot.
Well, William, he doesn't take much to get excited, but yeah. And
there was some tears at Royal Ascot.
Yeah, there was plenty.
Yeah.
There was plenty. No, it was a good performance by William, Chris and the team to get the horse back on track. I mean, he's had so many little niggling problems, but he's back and he looks better than ever as a 6-year-old. He galloped around Newbury 2 weeks ago. So he goes there in great form and has a great chance.
A mouth-watering race we've got to look forward to. Thank you for Martin to get his thoughts ahead of Saturday's King George VI and Queen Elizabeth QIPCO Stakes.